We are excited to be able to launch this grant programme and hope that you find this information about Synergi Small Grants Fund useful. There is more detailed information on our website. My name is Debbie, pronouns she, her, and I am the Director of Synergi and will be part of the grants team who will be reviewing the applications as well as being on the grants panel. This is an overview of what we are going to talk about today. We will start with speaking about Synergi and also the wider context we work in. We will also highlight key dates that we have for the fund, and it is our aim to stick to these dates, but they may also change. Next, I will speak about the eligibility criteria and priority groups before moving on to what we can and cannot fund, before ending with the decision-making process. Synergi focuses on the intersection between racial justice and mental health, distress or trauma. We connect activists and organisers into a network and shift resources and power to grassroots groups. We celebrate the history of activists that have come before us, and in collaboration, we build on this legacy. Together, we will imagine alternatives, reshaping the future to one of hope and healing, justice and joy. We have 4 work streams: community response to mental health, working with grassroots groups to experiment with community-based mental health care, supporting movement spaces, resources to build operational support, and will cover topics such as managing conflict, fund or bid writing, and legal structures. Democratising policy, which includes a small grant programme to redistribute resources to grassroots and user-led groups, and mental health and working racial justice. Remembrance as resistance, documenting over the last 40 years the work of racialised communities with lived experience who have been addressing the intersection of mental health and racial inequalities. Synergi is hosted by NSUN, the National Survivor User Network. All of Synergi's work, including these grants programme, is funded solely by Lankeley Chase Foundation. We have not and will not accept funding under Prevent or from the Home Office. In 2023, we awarded 3,000 each to 37 user-led groups. We are now launching our second grant programme to fund people racialised as Black or of colour with lived experience of mental ill health, distress or trauma, working within an abolitionist framework to take action on mental health and racial justice. Why is Synergi needed? Synergi recognises that oppressive systems and structures, both historic and current, have shaped dominant approaches to mental health care. We know that current approaches to mental health care for people racialised as Black or of colour, BIPOC, are not adequate, with poor outcomes experienced as a result of institutional racism and structural forms of violence. Current dominant modes of mental health care are not responsive to the lived experience of racialised BIPOC communities, leading to compounding of social inequalities. We also know that our communities with experience of carceral systems and dominant mental health provisions are further excluded and marginalised. A lack of funding, resources and capacity hinders lived experience movement building led by and for racialised BIPOC communities. What is missing, therefore, is the resources to sustain movement building, to redistribute space and power, to reimagine abolitionist and alternative mental health care. We recognise that not all racialised and BIPOC communities will be familiar with our use of the word abolition. We use this word purposely to mean dismantling harmful practices found in UK mainstream mental health systems. For Synergi, abolition encompasses intersectional, racist, racial and disability justice. The visible mental health field, a majority of initiatives are grounded in Western and capitalist ideology and not inclusive of our racialized BIPOC experiences. We believe there is an urgent need to embrace an abolitionist framework to rebuild mental health care that is liberatorial for individuals and communities. We know that racialized and BIPOC communities can and do build movement alternatives and abolitionist approaches. We use the term carceral systems to mean state systems within society that control and punish individuals and communities contributing to mental ill health, distress and trauma. This can include psychiatric hospitals, the wider mental health system, prisons, policing, national borders, prevent, surveillance, and the educational system. The Synergi Small Grant Fund is open to groups led by and for those racialised as Black or people of colour with lived experience of mental ill health, distress, or trauma. We will be offering grants of $5,000 to build power and take collective action on mental health and racial justice within an abolitionist framework. The fund exists to support communities who are racialised and have been harmed by mental health systems, incarcerations, policing, prisons, psychiatric and forensic settings, and/or immigration systems. We hope to support communities and collective power and advance abolition actions led by grassroots groups working towards transforming carceral systems that harm communities that are racialised, as well as those groups who are building community-based alternatives to care. We want this funding to reach those communities experiencing the most extreme forms of discrimination or injustice, including state violence, incarcerations, and detention. This might include, for example, anti-Blackness, the hostile environment, anti-trans legislation or policing or policies, prevent or harm caused to disabled people. We recognise that people who are racialised as Black or people of colour are not a monolith and based on individual positionalities and geographical locations will experience racism in different ways. We know from the data that anti-Blackness is particularly prevalent within the mental health system, and as a result, we are radically inviting in groups led by communities who are racialised as Black, and we will ring-fence 50% of the funding for these groups. We also want to counter the historical underfunding of this work. We know that groups with a high income and those that are registered with the Charity Commission find it easier to attract grant funding. Therefore, our fund is open to unregistered groups, by which we mean groups that are not formally registered with Companies House or the Charities Commission. What do we mean by non-traditional structures? These would be groups that are unconstituted. They could be constituted but not unincorporated groups, community interest companies, companies limited by guarantee, social enterprises. However, all groups must have a yearly income of under $50,000 to be eligible to apply. We hope to help cultivate solidarity and build coalitions across the movements by supporting groups working together to resist and challenge harmful and oppressive systems. We will be awarding grants to groups that are engaging with abolitionist frameworks, working towards transforming change over and alternatives to standardised service delivery. Here are some key dates. The eligibility forms will be received from the 1st of May to the 30th of May. Applications received from the 3rd of June to the 21st of June. Where possible, there will be calls and shortlisting summaries between the 1st and the 19th of July. The shortlist will be sent to panel members the week commencing the 5th of August. Decisions will be communicated to applicants the week commencing the 12th of August. Payments will be made the latest week commencing the 2nd of September. The eligibility criteria. This is key. You must meet all of the following criteria. Please do not apply if you do not. Your group will be led by people racialized as Black or people of colour that are based in England and live with mental health trauma, including racial trauma and distress. We know that some groups will have white members or members without experience of mental health, but you are still eligible, provided those members are neither the main decision makers nor the main people who benefit. Have a think about who makes the decisions about how your group is run. How do you ensure everyone has the opportunity to be involved in making decisions? Your group will benefit people, services, service users, and communities who have been impacted by or work on one or more of the following areas: prisons and policing, including forensic mental health settings, having lived experience of mental health settings. What do we mean by sectioning? We are not limiting our understanding of different types of sectioning that are associated with being kept in hospital under the Mental Health Act 1983. Rather, we see this as a broad term that encompasses those experiences of forensic settings and will be associated with the criminal justice system following court proceedings, and will be also associated with the need to keep the public at large safe. Being impacted by immigration detentions and removal centres, working at the intersection of mental health, distress or trauma, racial justice and disability justice using an abolitionist framework. What do we mean by disability justice? There is a tendency to limit and locate disability to the body and that it is permanent and visible. Being able-bodied is a current state, as everyone will experience a form of disability that may or not be visible. For example, the natural aging process, illness, disease, or an accident can impact our mind and body. Disability justice seeks to broaden an understanding of how we view disability to include how mental health, distress, and trauma is debilitating, but also what we see as a normal mind and/or body. Disability justice means a refocus on inclusion rather than exclusion, and that abolition is not just about naming the violence caused by carceral and mental health institutions, but creating the world we want for our liberation, which also includes all forms of violence. Your group engages in abolition activities. What do we mean by building abolition community alternatives to healing? Synergy work, like all abolitionist work, involves reimagining. We use this word to signal the need to experiment with new structures of care and support. We need to build alternatives to traditional systems so that communities and individuals living with mental ill health, distress, and trauma can experience hope and healing, justice, and joy. For example, you could be tackling the root cause of mental ill health, trauma, and distress for communities of colour through campaigning, community organising, change making, and or building radical community-based alternatives to healing, well-being, and mental health, or a non-reformist reform of current statutory services, such as stepping stones towards abolitionist approaches. For example, scrapping programmes that target specific communities. Your group is engaged in coalition building across the radical justice and mental health and disability movement. What do we mean by coalition building across grassroots radical justice and mental health? We feel it is important to build solidarity within and between groups who may be working on similar issues but are not connected due to living in areas of the UK where there is low population of racialised groups. We do not live single issue lives, and capitalist and neoliberal structures are built to support individuality rather than collective power. And we recognise the importance of being in solidarity with other communities who are racialised, included but not limited to disabled people, queer and trans people, religious communities, people with experience of immigration, asylum systems, and the working class communities. Your group also has to have a yearly income under £50,000. We want this fund to reach those communities experiencing the most extreme forms of discrimination or injustice, including state violence. In this context, we are encouraging applicants from those from disabled communities, people from Muslim communities, people from trans and non-binary communities, people from refugee or people seeking asylum. Some examples of the actions we hope to fund. Groups focusing on campaigning such as direct action. This could include protests, work to create change on a local or national level, sharing information and skills such as community organising training, or creating resources for members of your community to better advocate for themselves. This could include relevant research. We are aware there is less grant funding available for campaigning work, and we want to encourage groups to use the fund's flexibility in this area. Experimentation and dreaming. We recognise that one of the ways in which colonisation and white supremacy operate is by limiting and attacking our imaginations. By keeping us in survival mode, we are not denied the time to reclaim old and dream up new ways of doing things. We want this fund to support doing things differently. This might look like time for visioning, piloting new ideas, and sometimes learning from the stormy times and our failures. Organisational development. This could include training and development, tech subscriptions or equipment, reflective practice or coaching, or business planning. Anything needed to help you increase the resilience and sustainability of your group. Costs to deliver your support and activities. This could include staff or freelance costs, rent for space or room hire, materials for your activities, for example, art supplies, equipment and volunteer and group member expenses. This isn't an exhaustive list, and you may have other needs. Innovative ideas for coalition and movement building. Engaging a broad cross-section of grassroots communities and activists who are racialized to mobilize and amplify, organizing at the intersection of racial justice and mental health. This could include anything from skill sharing to collaborative joint actions. What we can't fund. As we've outlined, there's a lot of flexibility when it comes to the organizational structure of your group, but you still must be not-for-profit, which means that not paying profits to shareholders. This fund is only open to groups working in England, as this is where Synergi carries out its work. However, as many groups are now online, we understand that some group members may be based in other nations, and that is fine. Please contact us at synergi.grant@enson.org.uk if you have any questions about this. We don't accept applications from individuals, and we also can't fund retrospective costs, things that money has already been spent on. The application process. You can begin the application process via our online eligibility form, which will be accessible from our website from the 1st of May and will be closed at 5 p.m. the 30th of May. Alternatively, you can download the form as a Word document and send it to synergi.grant@enson.org.uk. The questions on the eligibility criteria will be the ones that I've outlined earlier. If you're not able to fill out the form, we can arrange a call to help you fill it out with you. If English is not your first language and you would like to have an interpreter, we may be able to pay for the cost. Please email us at synergi.grants@enson.org.uk or call us on 0207 820 8982 for help. Long listing. We will receive your eligibility form to see whether your group and proposal meets the eligibility criteria and is a good fit for what we are trying to fund. If it is, we will send you a link to complete the full application. Some of the information needed for the full application can be transferred from the eligibility form, and this can be done by copying and pasting. The next stage is that we will check the forms and do shortlisting. Your full application will be reviewed to check we have everything we need. If anything is missing, we may send it back to you and ask for more information. And/or we may arrange a short call to hear more about your work and the difference the fund will make. If you don't receive a call, don't worry. It just means that we have all the information we need. Following this process, all applications we think are a good fit with what we are trying to fund will be shortlisted and seen by a decision-making panel. You will find out whether your application will be seen by a panel before the end of July. The decision-making panel, your application will be seen by the panel, which I will go over in the next slide as to how we make decisions, but it's also available on our website. We will let you know if you've been successful or not by mid-August. If you have been successful, you will be sent a grant letter outlining the terms and conditions of the grant to sign and return. How we make the decisions. Is your group led by Black people and people of colour? This is key. If it is a white-led group applying to provide support, it should be rejected as it will be ineligible. Do the group offer meaningful opportunities for people or communities they are working with or alongside? Things to consider here will be how decisions are made, who makes a decision, is everyone able to be involved? You do not need to answer all of these questions, but these are the things that we consider when assessing. Does your proposal match with any of the priority groups we encourage you to apply? How significant and achievable is the impact of the proposal? Is there anyone else funding this work? Does it challenge us and open us up to wider opportunities for learning? Who's involved in the decision-making process? The Synergi grants team are all racialised and have lived experience of mental ill health, distress or trauma, and will provide a shortlist to the grants panel. The grants panel are all racialised and have lived experience of mental ill health, distress or trauma, have lived experience in at least one of the eligibility criteria. If you're successful, the project starts once your offer letter and supporting documentation has been returned, or get our funding to you as soon as possible so you can start spending. The offer letter will also include expectations about group attendance for coalition building. We will contact you at the midpoint of the grant and again towards the end of the grant to hear about how the impact of the grant and what you have learned. As mentioned before, we will expect you to attend quarterly sessions to share learning around how we build collective power and transform systems of power. At the end of the year, these learnings will form part of the Remembrance as Resistance workstream. To recap, you can begin the application process via online eligibility form, which will be assessed online, will be available online from the 1st of May. Alternatively, you'll be able to download the Word document and send it over to us. If you're not able to fill out the form, we can arrange a call to help you. And if English is not your first language and you would like to have an interpreter, we may be able to cover the cost. Please email us at synergy.grants@enson.org.uk or give us a call on 0207 820 8982 for help. Good luck.